Galactic Council meetings weren't supposed to include emergency psychiatric evaluations, but here Zix Kalen was, staring at a holographic display that showed something so fundamentally impossible, his neural processors kept freezing mid-analysis. The human female had done it again. This time, she'd somehow convinced 3 baby Stormwing Dragons to call her Mama, in 17 different galactic languages. Counselor Zix Kalen, please repeat your initial findings for the record. High Chancellor Mech Jorah's voice carried the particular strain reserved for reports that might necessitate rewriting fundamental laws of biology. And this time try to sound less traumatized. Zix Kalen's compound eyes refocused on the quantum communicator array, transmitting to 43 star systems where very important beings were having very uncomfortable conversations about human behavioral patterns. Chancellor, Doctor. Tessa Grove has achieved something that our xenobiological departments assured us was biologically impossible. She has successfully imprinted 3 Stormwing Dragon hatchlings to recognize her as their primary caregiver. That's ridiculous. Stormwing Dragons are apex predators that have terrorized galactic shipping lanes for over 2 millennia. Their juveniles are genetically hardwired to consume anything smaller than themselves within the first 72 hours of hatching. The human appears to have modified this particular aspect of their behavioral programming. Zix Kalen consulted his datapad with mandibles that clicked in patterns his species associated with existential confusion. Through what she describes as consistent bedtime routines and proper nutrition management. The holographic display shifted to show the interior of Emergency Quarantine Bay 7, where Dr. Tessa Grove sat cross-legged on the floor surrounded by 3 creatures that should have been devouring her limbs with casual efficiency. Instead, the baby Stormwing Dragons were cuddling. Actually cuddling with a human being, their razor-sharp talons carefully tucked away to avoid accidentally injuring their adoptive mother. For the record, Zix Kalen continued, Stormwing Dragons typically measure 4 meters in length at hatching, possess natural armor capable of deflecting military-grade plasma weapons, and generate internal temperatures hot enough to melt most starship hulls. They are, by every metric we understand, perfect killing machines from the moment they exit their eggs. And the human's response to this information was, according to her initial interview, she said, well, they're just babies who need someone to love them properly. Every child deserves a chance to be good. Zix Kalen's voice carried the flat quality of someone reporting phenomena that challenged basic understanding of causality. She then requested additional supplies of what she termed age-appropriate toys and organic baby food. High Chancellor Mech Jorah's image flickered with interference patterns that suggested quantum communicators struggling to process information that violated too many established facts simultaneously. How exactly did she come into possession of these particular hatchlings? The Shadowmaw Collective had captured the eggs during a raid on the Outer Rim colonies. Intelligence reports indicated they planned to weaponize the hatchlings once they reached combat maturity. Zix Kalen pulled up additional files, each more disturbing than the last. Dr. Grove was part of the rescue operation. When our forces breached the containment facility, she was assigned to handle captured alien specimens. Standard procedure would have been immediate termination of apex predator juveniles. The human objected, strenuously. She filed 17 different violation reports citing something called child welfare protocols and threatened to take the matter to what she termed a higher authority. Zix Kalen's optical sensors tracked the scene unfolding in the quarantine bay, where Dr. Grove was apparently conducting a feeding session that looked more like a preschool snack time than apex predator management. When pressed to identify this higher authority, she mentioned someone called HR. Who is HR? Unknown. Our intelligence networks have been unable to locate any being by that designation. The threat appears to have been sufficient to override standard military protocols. The 3 Stormwing Dragon hatchlings currently demonstrated behavior that would have made xenobiologists weep with confusion. They sat in a neat row, wings folded politely, while Dr. Grove dispensed what appeared to be pureed nutrition paste from containers labeled Earth Organic Baby Formula, Stage 2. The largest hatchling is designated Flame, Dr. Grove's voice carried through the quarantine bay's audio systems with the same gentle authority she might use for human children. The middle one is Spark, and our littlest sweetheart is Ember. Everyone say thank you for your dinner. 3 baby dragons, each capable of incinerating standard military equipment, responded with harmonic chirps that somehow managed to sound both adorable and absolutely terrifying. Counselor, are we absolutely certain these are authentic Stormwing Dragons? High Chancellor Mekjora's question carried the desperate hope of someone looking for any alternative to accepting impossible evidence. DNA analysis confirms species identification with 99.7% accuracy. These are genuine Stormwing Dragons in their natural juvenile stage. Zix Kalen's recording equipment captured every impossible moment. They should be exhibiting hunting behaviors, territorial aggression, and instinctive violence toward anything they perceive as potential prey. Instead, Baby Flame was currently allowing Dr. Grove to clean food residue from his armored snout with what appeared to be standard baby wipes. Now, Flame, we've talked about this. Good boys don't try to eat the cleaning supplies. Her tone carried the patient exasperation of someone dealing with a particularly stubborn toddler. I know they smell interesting, but they're not food. Here, try this instead. She produced what looked like a teething ring designed for creatures with diamond-hard fangs and natural flame-breathing capabilities. Flame accepted the toy with delighted chirps, immediately beginning to gnaw on something that should have been destroyed by dragonfire within seconds. Where did she obtain specialized equipment for dragon childcare? Mekjora's voice carried increasing desperation. According to supply requisition records, she fabricated everything herself using materials from the emergency manufacturing bay. Zix Kalen's mandibles clicked rapidly. Her personnel file indicates expertise in elementary education and child development. Apparently, these skills translate across species barriers in ways our educational theorists never anticipated. The scene in the quarantine bay shifted as Dr. Grove began what appeared to be playtime activities. 3 baby dragons participated in games that looked suspiciously like educational exercises designed to develop motor skills, social cooperation, and basic problem-solving abilities. Okay, everyone, let's practice our inside voices, Dr. Grove announced, holding up a small device that somehow measured and regulated dragon vocalizations. Remember, we use our quiet roars when we're inside, and save our big voices for when we're playing outside. 3 apex predators immediately adjusted their vocalizations to what could generously be described as library-appropriate volume levels. This is unprecedented, Zix Kalen reported, with voice patterns that suggested his worldview was undergoing systematic reconstruction. Dr. Grove has somehow trained juvenile Stormwing Dragons to regulate their natural behavioral responses through positive reinforcement techniques. Chancellor, I need to report additional complications. Zix Kalen consulted readings that his equipment kept flagging as error, impossible values detected. The hatchlings are demonstrating accelerated development in areas that don't typically show improvement through environmental conditioning. Explain. Their problem-solving capabilities have increased by approximately 40% since entering Dr. Grove's care. Their social cooperation indices are off our measurement scales. And their emotional regulation. He paused, checking readings again. Chancellor, these dragons are displaying empathy. Actual, measurable empathy responses. The proof was currently visible as baby Ember, the smallest of the 3, carefully shared his favorite toy with his brothers when he noticed they looked envious. This behavior should have been genetically impossible for a species that had evolved to view all other beings as either threats or food sources. Dr. Grove has somehow activated psychological development pathways that our experts didn't know existed in Stormwing Dragon neurology. Zix Kalen's report carried the weight of someone documenting phenomena that would require rewriting basic assumptions about intelligence, evolution, and interspecies relationships. She's not just caring for these hatchlings, she's improving them. How long has this been going on? 72 hours. The standard timeline for juvenile Stormwing Dragons to begin exhibiting fatal aggression toward caregivers. Zix Kalen watched as Dr. Grove conducted what appeared to be a basic educational lesson, using colorful blocks and patient encouragement. Instead, they're learning basic mathematics, color recognition, and what she calls conflict resolution skills. Indeed, when Baby Spark accidentally knocked over Flame's block tower, the expected response of violence was replaced by what could only be described as an apology, followed by cooperative rebuilding efforts. Chancellor, there's something else you need to understand about the tactical implications. Zix Kalen's voice dropped to the worried tones reserved for reports that might end careers. The human has been training them. Training them for what? According to her daily activity reports, she's teaching them life skills appropriate for responsible young dragons. This includes basic flight safety, proper fire control, and what she describes as stranger danger awareness. The holographic display showed Dr. Grove conducting a lesson that looked like standard childhood safety education, but involved creatures capable of generating plasma-level heat signatures and natural weapons that could penetrate battleship armor. Remember, babies, we don't breathe fire at people unless Mama says it's okay for protection purposes. Fire is a tool, not a toy. Her voice carried the same authority she might use to teach human children about crossing streets safely. And we never, ever fly away without telling Mama where we're going. 3 baby dragons nodded solemnly, their intelligence visibly developing in real time through interaction with someone who treated them as capable learners rather than mindless predators. Chancellor, I believe we're witnessing the emergence of something entirely new in galactic civilization. Zix Kalan's final observation of his shift carried implications that would reshape military doctrine across 43 star systems. Dr. Grove hasn't just domesticated Stormwing Dragons. She's created the first generation of dragons raised with human moral frameworks. The communication channel filled with the kind of silence that accompanied decisions about whether to classify phenomena as strategic assets or existential threats. Below in the quarantine bay, Dr. Grove was tucking 3 baby dragons into specially modified sleeping areas while humming what sounded like an Earth lullaby. Each hatchling settled peacefully, their natural predatory instincts temporarily replaced by something that looked remarkably like trust, affection, and the security that came from knowing someone loved them unconditionally. "Sweet dreams, my little ones," she whispered, adjusting thermal regulation systems with the expertise of someone who had spent considerable time researching dragon physiology. "Tomorrow we'll practice flying in the safe zone and maybe work on some basic reading skills." 3 sleepy dragon chirps responded with sounds that somehow managed to be both adorable and ominous, suggesting that the universe was about to meet its first generation of dragons raised by a human mother who believed every child deserved love, proper education, and the chance to become better than their genetics suggested possible. The next morning brought revelations that made Zix Kalan question fundamental assumptions about intelligence, evolution, and the terrifying potential of human childcare techniques. Dr. Grove had implemented what she cheerfully described as morning circle time, and the results were disturbing in their implications. "Good morning, my sweethearts." Her voice carried through the quarantine bay with maternal warmth that somehow made hardened council observers feel nostalgic for their own hatching periods. "Who's ready for today's adventure in learning?" 3 baby Stormwing Dragons responded with excited chirps that registered on harmonic frequencies typically associated with joy and anticipation. This emotional range shouldn't have existed in creatures designed by evolution to experience only hunger, aggression, and territorial dominance. Today we're going to practice our sharing skills and learn about something very important called helping others. Dr. Grove produced educational materials that appeared to be standard Earth childhood development tools, modified for beings with natural weapons. "Can anyone tell me what we learned yesterday about being kind?" Baby Ember raised one wing tentatively. We use gentle touches with friends." "That's exactly right, sweetheart." The praise in Dr. Grove's voice triggered responses in all 3 hatchlings that Zix Kalan's sensors identified as neurochemical patterns associated with pride and satisfaction. "And what do we do when someone is sad?" "We give hugs," Spark announced with the kind of enthusiasm that would have been heartwarming if it wasn't coming from a creature whose hugs involved razor-sharp talons and body temperatures that could melt steel. "Perfect. Now today we have a very special visitor coming to meet you. Another dragon who needs to learn about friendship and family. Dr. Grove's expression carried something that made experienced observers instinctively check evacuation protocols. His name is Scorch, and he's been alone for a very long time. He might be scared or angry at first, but we're going to show him how wonderful it is to be part of a loving family. Zix-Kalen's emergency communicator erupted with incoming priority signals. Council, I'm receiving updates on the incoming specimen. Adult Stormwing Dragon, designation Scorch, captured during yesterday's raid on Shadowmaw installations. Age, approximately 40 standard years. Combat record, extensive. Psychological profile, extremely hostile, territorial, and aggressive. An adult Stormwing Dragon? High Chancellor Mech Jorah's transmission carried harmonics of pure horror. Those creatures are classified as Class Alpha extinction threats. A single adult can destroy entire military installations. The human has requested that Scorch be introduced to her family for what she terms socialization and rehabilitation therapy. Zix-Kalen's voice carried the flat quality of someone reporting his own imminent demise. When security protocols were explained to her, she responded by saying that Scorch just needs someone to believe in him and set proper boundaries. The quarantine bay's reinforcement systems activated as Scorch's transport container was delivered under maximum security protocols. The adult dragon's roars registered on seismic equipment throughout the facility, each vocalization carrying enough rage to make seasoned military personnel reconsider their career choices. Dr. Grove adjusted her posture with the kind of determination that suggested she was preparing for the most important parenting challenge of her career. Now, children, remember what we practiced about meeting new family members. We stay calm, we use our inside voices, and we show them how safe and loved they are here. 3 baby dragons arranged themselves around their human mother with protective instincts that should have been impossible for creatures their age. They had somehow learned to shield their caregiver while maintaining non-threatening postures, displaying tactical awareness that exceeded military training protocols. Dr. Grove, Zix-Kalan transmitted through emergency channels, perhaps we should reconsider this introduction. Adult Stormwing Dragons have never demonstrated capacity for behavioral modification. The risk to yourself and the hatchlings is— "Oh, nonsense," she replied with the cheerful confidence of someone who had apparently decided that apex predators were simply misunderstood children in need of proper guidance. Scorch has spent his whole life being treated like a monster. It's time someone showed him what love looks like. The transport container's security locks disengaged with mechanical precision. Through reinforced viewing ports, Scorch's golden eyes blazed with fury that had been building for 40 years of isolation and combat. His massive form, measuring nearly 8 meters from snout to tail, represented everything that galactic civilization feared about Stormwing Dragons. Dr. Grove opened the container door with movements so casual they might have been unlocking a closet. "Hello, Scorch," she said, in the same gentle tone she used for bedtime stories. "Welcome home, sweetheart. We've been waiting for you." Scorch erupted from the transport container with 40 years of accumulated rage focused into pure violence. 8 meters of apex predator launched directly at the small human who had dared to speak to him with kindness. Dr. Grove stepped sideways with movements so casual they might have been avoiding a puddle. "Now, Scorch, that's not how we greet new people." The dragon's flame breath scorched the air where she had been standing. Dr. Grove produced a spray bottle from her supply kit. "We don't breathe fire at family members. That's not acceptable behavior in this household." Scorch wheeled around for another attack, his golden eyes blazing with confusion that something so fragile had survived his assault. Dr. Grove misted him with whatever was in the spray bottle. The effect was immediate and bewildering. Scorch stopped mid-charge, his aggressive posture shifting to something that looked remarkably like embarrassment. His massive form settled into a submissive crouch. "What did she spray him with?" Zix-Kalan transmitted, his voice carrying panic. "Standard water infused with calming lavender essence and maternal disappointment," came the response. Scorch sat in timeout position while Dr. Grove explained proper household behavior. "Now then, Scorch, I know you're scared, but look around you. See how safe everyone is here? These are your new brothers." Baby Flame stepped forward with courage that would have made military heroes proud. "Hi, Uncle Scorch. Mama says you need hugs." Instead of violence, Scorch stared at the hatchling with profound confusion, mixed with longing. The breakthrough came when little Ember offered his favorite toy to Scorch with guileless generosity. The massive dragon accepted it with trembling talons, learning gentleness in real time. "Thank you," Scorch managed. "Is nice." "That's wonderful sharing, Ember. And Scorch, beautiful manners." Dr. Grove praised both, triggering positive responses in all 4 dragons. Zix-Kalan transmitted with voice patterns suggesting complete worldview reconstruction. "Council, the adult dragon is displaying behavioral modifications that should require months." Dr. Grove achieved this in 12 minutes using emotional support and clear expectations. "This is unprecedented." High Chancellor Mekjora's response carried implications that would reshape interspecies relations across known space. An adult apex predator voluntarily suppressing its combat instincts in response to maternal authority figures. But the morning's revelations were far from over. Dr. Grove had begun what she cheerfully called family integration activities, which involved teaching a 40-year combat veteran how to play educational games with his new baby brothers. "Now, Scorch, when we play blocks, we build together. We don't knock down other people's towers unless they ask us to." Her instruction manual appeared to be a comprehensive guide to dragon rehabilitation disguised as standard childhood development techniques. "And remember, we use our inside voice when we're excited." The sight of an extinction-level threat carefully stacking colorful blocks while 3 baby dragons offered helpful suggestions would have been heartwarming if it wasn't so fundamentally terrifying in its implications. Scorch was learning cooperation, empathy, and impulse control at a rate that suggested human maternal influence operated through psychological mechanisms that xenobiology departments had never identified. "Dr. Grove," Zix-Kalan transmitted with growing urgency. "I'm receiving reports of additional complications. The Shadowmaw Collective has issued termination orders for all captured Stormwing Dragons. They consider the specimens too valuable to remain in enemy hands." "How many assets are they deploying for recovery operations?" 12 Voidcutter assault ships, 4 heavy bombardment platforms, and approximately 200 elite soldiers equipped for anti-dragon warfare. Zix-Kalan's voice carried the weight of someone reporting overwhelming tactical disadvantage. "Estimated arrival, 6 hours." Dr. Grove looked up from helping Scorch with basic reading exercises, her expression shifting to something that made experienced observers instinctively check evacuation protocols. "I see. Well, that's unfortunate for them." She stood with movements that somehow conveyed absolute confidence in her ability to handle threats that required military fleets to address. "Children, we're going to practice something new today. It's called Protecting Our Family." 4 dragons, 3 babies and 1 combat veteran, responded with attention patterns that suggested Dr. Grove's educational curriculum included subjects that weren't typically covered in standard childcare training. "Now, Scorch, I know you've spent a long time thinking that fighting was the only way to handle problems. But today you're going to learn about the difference between violence and protection." Her voice carried implications that made military strategists across 43 star systems suddenly reconsider their threat assessment protocols. When someone threatens your family, you don't just fight them, you educate them about consequences. The lesson plan she produced from her supply kit contained tactical information that shouldn't have existed outside classified military databases. Diagrams of Shadowmaw ship configurations, detailed analyses of their weapon systems, and countermeasures that suggested Dr. Grove had been preparing for this possibility since the day she'd first met her dragon children. "Flame, Spark, Ember, you're our reconnaissance and communications team. Your job is to keep everyone safe and help coordinate our response." She distributed equipment that appeared to be standard children's toys, but registered on scanners as sophisticated tactical gear. "Scorch, you're our primary defensive specialist. But remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to teach them about respecting family boundaries." Dr. Grove, Zix-Kalan, transmitted with growing desperation. "Perhaps evacuation would be the more prudent approach. The incoming force represents overwhelming tactical superiority." "Oh, I don't think they understand what they're dealing with," She replied with the cheerful confidence of someone who had apparently decided that threatening her children represented the kind of poor judgment that required immediate correction. They see 4 dragons. What they don't realize is that they're about to meet a family. She knelt down, opening her arms in a gesture that immediately drew all 4 dragons into a group embrace that somehow accommodated beings of completely different sizes and combat capabilities. Remember, my loves, we protect each other. We take care of each other. And we show anyone who threatens our family exactly what happens when you make a human mother angry. The collective response from 4 dragons created harmonic frequencies that registered as both adorable family bonding and absolutely terrifying tactical coordination. Scorch's 40 years of combat experience combined with 3 baby dragons raised on human moral frameworks was apparently about to become the Shadowmaw Collective's most expensive educational experience. "Family meeting is over, Dr. Grove announced, standing with movements that suggested someone preparing for the most important parenting challenge of her career. "Time to show some visitors why you never, ever threaten a mother's children." Zix Kalen transmitted his final observation of the day with sensors that could barely process what they were recording. "Council, I believe we're about to witness the practical application of human maternal protective instincts to large-scale military operations. The tactical implications are profound." 6 hours later, 12 Void Cutter assault ships, 4 heavy bombardment platforms, and 200 elite Shadowmaw soldiers learned that Dr. Tessa Grove had raised her dragon children with very specific ideas about appropriate responses to threats against family members. The universe was about to discover that apex predators raised by human mothers didn't just become better individuals. They became an entirely new category of protective force that operated by rules that made traditional military doctrines seem quaint by comparison. The Shadowmaw Collective's termination mission became a comprehensive lesson in why threatening human-raised dragon families represented the kind of catastrophic judgment error that civilizations remembered for generations. Dr. Grove's children, as it turned out, had learned their lessons very, very well. The first indication that the Shadowmaw assault force had made a tactical miscalculation came when their lead Void Cutter encountered what appeared to be a small dragon playing with colorful toys in the facility's outer courtyard. Baby Flame looked up from his educational blocks and waved cheerfully at the descending warship. "Hi there," his voice carried ship's communication systems with the kind of innocent friendliness that made hardened soldiers question their life choices. "Are you here to hurt my family?" The Shadowmaw commander activated his primary weapons array, targeting systems locking onto what should have been an easy elimination. "Terminate the specimen. All dragons are considered hostile." Flame tilted his head with the expression of disappointment that Dr. Grove had taught him to use when encountering poor decision-making. "Oh, that's not very nice. Mama says people who try to hurt families need to learn about consequences." The educational demonstration that followed lasted approximately 14 seconds. Flame's response wasn't the mindless aggression of a typical Stormwing Dragon, but rather the calculated precision of someone who had been taught that violence was a teaching tool, not a goal. His flame breath didn't just destroy the Void Cutter's weapons systems. It surgically disabled every offensive capability while leaving life support intact. "There," Flame announced with satisfaction. "Now you can think about better choices while you wait for pickup." The remaining 11 Void Cutters adjusted their tactics, deploying in formation patterns designed for coordinated assault against apex predators. They had prepared for traditional Stormwing Dragon behavior: individual aggression, territorial disputes, and predictable attack vectors. They had not prepared for a family. Spark emerged from the facility's eastern approach, his smaller size allowing him to avoid initial detection. His role in the family's defensive strategy involved what Dr. Grove had taught him to call helping visitors understand mistakes. The electromagnetic pulse he generated didn't just disable the ship's electronics. It played educational audio messages explaining why threatening children was inappropriate behavior. "Attention visitors," his recorded voice explained patiently while warships fell from the sky with non-fatal precision. "You have attempted to harm our family. This is against the rules. Please report to timeout positions and consider better life choices." Meanwhile, baby Ember had taken position near the facility's main entrance, where his specialized equipment allowed him to coordinate defensive operations through what looked like an innocent tea party with stuffed animals. Each toy was actually a sophisticated tactical relay, providing real-time battlefield awareness that would have impressed military strategists. Uncle Scorch, Ember's voice carried through family communication channels. The mean people brought friends. Lots and lots of friends. I see them, little star. Scorch's response rumbled with affection that would have been impossible 48 hours earlier. Mama taught us about dealing with bullies, didn't she? The adult dragon's emergence from the facility marked the moment when the Shadowmaw collective realized their intelligence reports had been catastrophically inadequate. They had expected a combat veteran operating under standard territorial aggression patterns. Instead, they encountered something entirely new. An apex predator who had learned restraint, tactics, and the difference between destruction and protection. Scorch's first demonstration involved carefully extracting the crew from a heavy bombardment platform before precisely dismantling the ship into component parts. His movements suggested someone who had spent considerable time learning about equipment vulnerabilities and non-lethal disabling techniques. "Attention, small angry people," he announced through the ship's communication system, his pronunciation much improved after 2 days of speech therapy with Dr. Grove. "You have made poor choices. My mama says everyone deserves chance to learn better. You will sit quietly and think about why threatening families is wrong." The tactical coordination between 4 dragons raised on human moral frameworks created battlefield dynamics that had never existed in galactic military history. They moved with the fluid cooperation of a unit that had trained together for years, despite knowing each other for less than 72 hours. Their attacks were precisely calibrated to disable, rather than destroy, to educate, rather than eliminate. But the most terrifying aspect of their defensive strategy became apparent when Dr. Grove herself entered the battlefield. She walked through the combat zone with movements that suggested someone conducting a routine safety inspection, rather than engaging in life-or-death warfare. In her hands, she carried what appeared to be a standard clipboard and a spray bottle that had somehow become the most feared weapon in local space. "Excuse me," she called to the Shadowmaw ground forces who had taken defensive positions behind improvised barriers. "But you're trespassing on family property. I'm going to need you to explain your behavior immediately." 200 elite soldiers equipped for anti-dragon warfare found themselves facing something their training had never prepared them to handle. A human elementary education specialist who treated armed invasion as a disciplinary issue requiring immediate correction. "Ma'am," the Shadowmaw field commander managed, his voice carrying the strain of someone whose tactical doctrine was crumbling in real time. "We are here to retrieve stolen military assets. Surrender the dragons immediately or face total annihilation." Dr. Grove consulted her clipboard with the kind of patient attention she might give to a particularly challenging homework assignment. "I see. And did you file the appropriate custody paperwork? Because according to Galactic Child Welfare Protocol 77 Alpha, you can't just take children without proper documentation. Those are not children. They are weapons of mass destruction." "Those are my babies," Dr. Grove corrected with voice patterns that made experienced soldiers suddenly remember why they had once been afraid of disappointing their own mothers. "And you have just made the kind of parenting mistake that requires immediate educational intervention." What followed was a demonstration that redefined several fundamental concepts about human protective instincts, battlefield tactics, and the practical applications of maternal authority to large-scale military operations. Dr. Grove didn't fight the Shadowmaw forces, she disciplined them. The spray bottle, as it turned out, contained a solution that induced temporary compliance behaviors in most known species. The clipboard held detailed psychological profiles of every soldier in the assault force, complete with customized rehabilitation strategies based on their individual behavioral issues. "Now then," she announced, as 200 elite warriors found themselves sitting in neat rows under the influence of what she cheerfully called enhanced timeout protocols. "We're going to have a serious discussion about appropriate conflict resolution techniques and why threatening other people's families is never acceptable behavior." The lecture that followed lasted approximately 3 hours and covered topics ranging from basic empathy development to advanced interpersonal communication strategies. By the end, the Shadowmaw Collective's elite military unit had been transformed into something resembling a support group for beings with aggressive behavioral disorders. Dr. Grove, Zix Kalen transmitted with voice patterns that suggested his species' equivalent of religious awe. You've just reformed an entire military assault force using elementary education techniques. Well, they were obviously acting out because no one had ever taught them proper social skills, she replied, with the matter-of-fact tone of someone who had just solved a routine childcare challenge. Everyone deserves the chance to learn better. Around the facility, 4 dragons were helping their former enemies with equipment recovery and basic first aid, demonstrating the kind of compassionate post-conflict behavior that would have made peace negotiators weep with joy. Besides, Dr. Grove added, watching Scorch carefully bandage a soldier's minor injuries while explaining proper wound care techniques, my children needed to practice their helping skills. This worked out perfectly for everyone.